Desmond Mills will plead guilty to state charges in the death of Tyree Nichols. This is just in from the Shelby County District Attorney's Office. As we've told you, Mills is changing his plea today in the federal case. This plea will be in the state case in which Mills and 4 other former Memphis police officers are charged with murder. The DA says Mills has agreed to cooperate with investigators. Take a listen to the DA.
We expect to continue. We believe this is a fair settlement.
So this is in addition to this. It will be 15 years, state and federal, or
the
concurrent?
2 sentences will run concurrent.
It will be concurrent, and
yes.
He is now an informant for you all.
I don't know if you want to use that term, but he is fully cooperating.
What is the expectation of his cooperation, and what it will bring the prosecution?
Well, we're not going to go into the details of the kind of evidence that we expect, because it's an ongoing case, but he is fully cooperating, and we expect him to continue to fully cooperate, answering all questions truthfully, testifying to his role in the incident and what he saw the other defendants commit at the same incident. And if he deviates from that, if he does not cooperate, or if he provides anything less than truthful testimony, then the deal is off.
So have you contacted any of the, have any of the other defendants contacted your office? Possible, please.
We're not going to speak about that right now, but you did just remind me. I wanted to point out that we have consulted with Tyree Nichols' family and their counsel throughout this process, and they are fully in support of this global agreement.
What charges do you guys expect him to plead guilty to in the state case?
Well, that's still to be determined based on what the actual sentence is arrived at in the federal court. But, we have already charged second-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, official misconduct. It could be some combination of those or facilitation of one of those offenses. We'll have to reach that decision after the federal sentence.
He is going to testify against the other officers.
That's part of the plan.
What do you expect him to say about his training and the role that city government played in this?
I'm not prepared to go into that detail right now. I will say this, though, that I thought it was important that as part of this global settlement, Mr. Mills explicitly agree to cooperate not only in the criminal prosecutions, federal and state, but also in the civil rights investigation as well, because I think it's important that we not only make sure that the defendants themselves are held responsible for their actions, but that we learn as much as possible about what kind of systemic reforms that we can learn from this experience to make policing better in Shelby County.
Do you expect more charges out of the civil investigation, the civil rights investigation?
So when you say charges, I don't expect there necessarily to be criminal charges, but it is very commonly the case that either a civil lawsuit or an immediate consent agreement results from these pattern and practice investigations. But of course, that's up to DOJ.
How critical could it be to have Mills cooperating, potentially testifying, while there's potential that you could get plea deals from other defendants in this matter? How critical could that be?
Well, whenever you have one of the actual participants in the offense itself who was there and saw everything that happened, whenever you have them willing to cooperate with the prosecution, that helps us in making our case at trial if it's necessary. It also, I think, probably would incentivize other defendants to consider a plea deal, but we're not there yet.
When do you think that you all will make a decision on the state charges he'll plead guilty to?
Well, the contemplation is that we will allow the federal sentencing to occur first, and then after that, we will make a decision on what charges are appropriate for Mr. Mills to agree to, so that we have a similar recommendation for that two concurrent 15-year sentences, or whatever it is that the federal judge decides on. So we're going to put that part on hold until after the federal sentence.
Do you think the federal judge 180 months?
I suspect that it is likely that the judge will do something at that level or close to it. Of course, that's up to Judge Norris.
And so on Monday, I believe all parties are expected back in court. And so what can we expect then? A trial date, or what's
the purpose of the Monday court setting is just to set a trial date, and that'll still take place.
Was this a deal that was offered to the other 4 as well? Why Mills specifically?
Well, I'm not going to get into too much detail about private plea negotiations. To a large extent, it's individual defense counsel may initiate these kinds of discussions, and we're open to those kinds of initiations. And, you know, it also has to do with the relative levels of responsibility of the different defendants. You know, our position has been from day one that all 5 officers jointly participated in the beating that led to Tyree Nichols' death, and they're all jointly responsible. But that doesn't mean that there aren't different levels of responsibility within those 5, and that certainly was a big factor in our decision.
How unprecedented was this? How unprecedented?
I don't know. The fact of a global settlement when they're pending federal and state charges isn't unprecedented. It's happened before.
Do you think this will accelerate the timeline of the state case at all?
I think it's a step toward resolution. Be that trial or whatever it is. It's a step toward. It's hard to say. Hard to answer questions about time. Maybe Monday we'll have a better idea.
Are you hoping this will bring some calm to this conflict?
Yes, I am. I mean, I think our initial decision to thoroughly but nonetheless quickly investigate and be prepared to announce charges prior to the release of the pretty inflammatory video, I mean, that I think, you know, did help to calm things and prevent a violent response. I mean, there were protests, and there were vigorous protests in Memphis and around the country, but they were violent, you know, and I think that was good that we handled it that way. I think the more we resolve these cases and the faster we resolve these cases, yes, I think that will definitely, you know, have a salutary effect in terms of calming the community. You know, it's no secret that there's a lot of public outrage and concern about this case.
Let's be very clear. So these, you will mirror federal court charges. In other words, you will consider dropping other charges that is comparable to the ones that he pleads guilty to, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
The intent is for us to mirror.
He will not go to trial, in other words, if he cooperates.
If he cooperates fully, you know, pursuant to the memorandum of understanding, he would not go to trial. There would be a guilty plea later on in state court, where the idea is that we would recommend a sentence that would be the same as the sentence that he received in federal court to run concurrent with it.
And he was facing life in prison on both different cases. 15 years is considerably less than life in prison.
Right.
Do you feel like that's any less justice for the family?
No, I don't, for 3 reasons. The first one is the family itself fully supports this. The second is he is providing substantial cooperation that will assist us in the prosecution of other defendants and in the civil rights pattern and practice investigation, which I want to emphasize. I think that's very important because we need systemic reform out of this tragedy. And then the third reason is that, like I said before, there are different levels of responsibility within the 5 defendants, and I would say that, you know, based on our understanding of the facts as we allege them, he is not the worst of the 5. So when you add those 3, you know, reasons together, I think this is an entirely fair settlement, and I believe the family agrees.
Who is the worst?
I would add to that just one thing. 15 years is a recommendation. He is pled guilty to a charge and still carries life in prison. It's going to be the federal judge that sentences him.
Who is the worst as well? You mentioned he's not the worst.
I'd rather not go into that right
Why
now.
do you think that Mills is the least of the...
Did not say he was the least. I just said he wasn't the worst. Yeah. There's different levels of responsibility, and I think when you consider his level of responsibility and the fact that he's fully cooperating, and that the family, you know, fully supports it, I don't have any problem. I'm completely comfortable saying this is a fair resolution. And as Mr. Harrigan pointed out, there's no guarantee exactly what the sentence would be. You heard him in there. You heard the judge say, you know, there's no guarantee that I will sentence you to what has been recommended by the U.S. attorney. It could be higher, it could be lower. It's just a question of what we are willing to agree to in terms of our recommendation, which is a non-binding recommendation, with the judge making the final decision.
And when did this agreement come about?
All right, we are dipping out of that live news conference. Former MPD officer Desmond Mills to plead guilty in federal court and state court in the death of Tyree Nichols. Federal hearing is happening right now. You heard from Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy. Mills agreed upon a sentence of 15 years in federal prison. It's federal prison, so he will have to serve the full 15 years, but a judge must approve that time. Mills has agreed to cooperate with prosecutors as well against the other 4 former Memphis police officers. We're expecting to hear from Nichols' family very soon, and we'll have that for you tonight on Fox 13 News at 5.